Hello baking students, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about how to make a really great pie dough. Again, I'm Christine Mills from West Virginia. I want to tell you all about how you can make the most ideal pie pastry, as it is apple season here in West Virginia. It's important for everybody to have this skill, so students pay attention and I'm going to teach you all the tricks. The recipe that I'm using today is a basic flaky pie dough. It's by Chef Bo Freeberg, and he writes the fundamentals of baking pastry, and it's my absolutely favorite pie pastry to work with. It uses almost entirely all butter, and I think that's why I love it so much, because I love the flavor of butter. I love the color that butter brings to baked goods. Another option for you would be the Betty Crocker recipe, the double crust pie recipe that they have for all of our friends that are keeping vegan, so that it doesn't have any animal byproduct. For this recipe, however, we're going to use a whole lot of butter. We're going to use a half a pound of butter. I have 8 ounces of butter that I've cut up into large cubes. And it is cold. I kept it in the refrigerator until the time to bring it out and make the pie dough. That's super important. You want cold butter. Now, I know this goes against what you probably hear in a lot of different recipes, which is, oh, bring it to room temperature. You do not want to do that with pie pastry. Absolutely not. I also have 2.5 ounces of just regular vegetable Crisco shortening. And I've also chilled this as well because I want to keep everything absolutely as cold as possible. I have a teaspoon of salt, and then finally I have 12.5 ounces of bread flour. Now that's not all purpose, that's bread flour. I'm going to have a slightly greater amount of protein in this flour that makes this pastry hold together with all the butter that we're using. And then also I have some ice water to add. I'm going to need about 1/3 of a cup of that. So you're seeing a theme here, cold, cold, cold. Keep that in mind. If I decide to make a fruit-filled pie for, say, 4th of July, I might even chill my flour as well, because I know it'll be warmer in the house, and with people going in and coming out, I want to keep it super, super cold. And the reason why is, unlike other baked goods, I want to see gobs of fat in the final product, because I know that's how I'm going to get my flaky pastry. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. To my 12.5 ounces of bread flour, I'm going to add my teaspoon of salt. And I don't need to sift this because I'm going to use a wire whisk to simply just do that job for me. I'm going to whisk in that salt to evenly incorporate it and break up any lumps that I have in the flour. Then I'm going to add in my shortening, 2.5 ounces of regular Crisco, and 8 ounces of that diced up butter. Again, it's pieces about this big. I'm going to say that's probably about the size of a quarter maybe at this point. And I want to break these down using the rubbing technique, or alternatively, you can use a pastry cutter, so that I get pieces that remain that are about the size of a hazelnut, a filbert nut, or a very small marble, if you're not familiar with what a hazelnut is. All right, I'm going to use what they call is the rubbing technique. Basically, I'm just going to break this up to start with, just so that I don't splash a bunch of flour up on myself. Breaking in, first of all, that you're going to feel that shortening is going to completely incorporate, and that's perfectly normal. That's the way you want to do it. That's going to start making the flour part of this pastry a more mealy, crumbly mass. You can see I'm just running it through my fingers, and then I'm going to begin to start to rub it. Now, this is going to take me a few minutes, but bear with me. This is the most important thing that you want to do when it comes to making pie dough. I don't use a food processor when I do it. You could, but you have to be very mindful of how long you are pulsing that, because you don't want to break up the butter too much. I don't use a mixer unless I'm doing a lot of pie dough at a time. This recipe makes enough for a double crust 10-inch pie, so that's with the top on it. And a little bit later on, I'm going to show you how I'm going to fill it with an apple cream filling, kind of French style. I'll also be demonstrating how to roll out pie dough. I think that having the skills and techniques of being able to make a great crust like this is super important. It's the kind of thing you need in your arsenal if you're gonna be a baker. This foundational skill sort of lends itself to so many other things. If you can roll pie dough, you can roll anything. You can see I still have these chunks in there. I don't want to lose those chunks. That butter has to be cold to start with, but I can begin to see a change in the texture. It starts to look almost like streusel topping in a way. I'm just breaking it up as I go. I like the idea of using my hands when I do this as opposed to a pastry cutter. I just think that it really helps me to know that I'm doing the right thing because I can feel it, I can see it, I know I'm on the right road. See, rubbing it together, you really got to put your back into it. You've really got to really work those muscles. Don't be timid when you're doing it. Don't worry that you're going to do it wrong. It's when you get the size you're looking for, you know to stop. You can't put too much power into it. And I'm almost there already. I'm getting there. I still got a few larger pieces. Like that piece is maybe a little too big. I'm just going to kind of pinch it and break it up a bit. And I'm just going with it. And I'm super excited. It's early in the day here. It's a cool, crisp October morning in West Virginia. And I'm gonna have a pie ready for dinner and I'm super excited. Just about there. I'm just almost there. Total baking nerd here that gets excited about pie dough. More than anything, excited to have a delicious pie to share with my loved ones. I'm thinking there's going to be a great little fire pit out back tonight and some s'mores and a slice of pie. Maybe we'll roast some hot dogs on the fire. All right, I'm there. I've achieved it. So we still have pieces. Don't be upset about the pieces. Don't look at it and say, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? This is what you want to see. You absolutely want to see it. Now, if you are proficient in biscuit making, you will kind of already know this method because you've probably already been doing this cutting in technique, this rubbing technique. In that case, with biscuits, you want to see little bits of butter that are about the size of green peas. So think of pie pastry. When you think of biscuits, we roll them nice and chubby and fat because we want a big, tall biscuit. When we roll pie dough, we're going to roll it thinner, so we need bigger pieces of butter. Ultimately, what will happen is, as we roll it out, that butter will thin, and it will almost laminate layers in the pastry so that when the butter melts, it leaves those gaps, those cavities in there that give you the flakes that we so desire in a pastry. Alrighty, I'm going to add my water at this time. I have 2 measuring cups. One for measuring and one for the cold water. The ice is strategic. I want cold water as cold as I can get it, and I'm going to go ahead and measure. Notice that I'm getting down to eye level to measure that water so that I can be sure I'm getting the right amount. All right, I've got 1/3 of a cup. I'm going to hold on to that water. Sometimes I need to add a little bit more. Don't want to go crazy, but sometimes I do. And it can depend on the weather and how accurate I was with my measuring. I feel pretty comfortable today. So I'm going to add this in. That was 1/3 of a cup of ice water. And I'm going to give it a quick stir with a rubber scraper just to get it started. And then I'm going to begin to knead it together. You see, I'm scraping it off because I am not going to miss a drop. Right, and then I'm getting in there with my hands. You can't be worried about getting your fingers dirty with this. And I'll tell you, if you have long fingernails, this is going to be a challenge for you. I like to keep mine nice and short. I know ladies love them long and painted, but if you're a true baking nerd like I am, you don't want anything that gets in your way. All right, I'm bringing it together. And again, Don't be afraid to put a little bit of elbow grease in there. You gotta get your back in there. Oh, and I'm so excited because I can see the chunks of butter in my dough, and that is so important. All right, I don't want to over knead it. Just bringing it so that it is together. Over kneading does one thing. It makes it tough because the more we knead it, the more gluten development is happening. All right, so I've got it to this point. I've got one big mass and I can see those chunks of butter in there. Look at those, you can see them. All right. I'm gonna set my bowl aside and I'm gonna break my pastry into 2 pieces. Just gonna use this as a guide. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm sort of just winging it here with a little guesstimation. Once I have my piece, I wanna smash it down. I wanna push it and shape it into a nice disc. This is gonna be important for the next step as I get ready to roll the dough. I always say, if you start round, you have a better chance of finishing round. All right, I'm gonna put these pastry doughs into the refrigerator for about 45 minutes. I want them to be cool again. I could go ahead and roll them now, but the butter's warming up a little bit. I've warmed it with my hands as well. And if I go ahead and roll it, I have a chance of breaking more of that butter down and incorporating it into the flour more, which I don't want to happen. Okay, so I'll see you in just a few minutes.